Good thing, because when it closed would be. Finally finished wrapping. So yeah, I want to get that out of my system before I start. Sooner or later, but it's gonna be probably. Because there's a bunch of stuff on the agenda.
This. All right. Apparently gavels don't carry the same weight as they used to. All right. I am calling this meeting to order at 1:01 p.m. And let's see. And let's see, I will start by standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'll all follow me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First question is, do we have any board members participating remotely?
We do not.
All right, very good. Next would be roll call, please.
Leon Garcia,
Here.
Mark Joseph, Donald Williams.
Here.
Kevin Eisenberg,
Here.
Liz Alessio.
Here.
Scott Sedgley,
Here.
Alfredo Pedroza.
Here.
Ryan Gregory. Paul Doring,
Here.
Anna Shuto,
Here.
Margie Moeller,
Here.
Robin McKee Cant,
Here.
Deborah Smith. We do have quorum.
Perfect. All right, adoption of the agenda, and here I would like to make a request. We, as some of you may know, we have two members who have a Napa Sanitation District meeting at 4, and so they would like to leave at 3:30. We want to make sure that we have a closed session item that everybody can participate in. So the goal is to expedite today's meeting to make sure that can be done. And one idea was to consider amending the agenda to put the business items onto consent. The reason for this is they are essentially contracts that we're agreeing to consult with. They aren't necessarily the actual outcomes. The active transportation plan, for example, we're awarding a contract for somebody to produce it. So the thought was we could put all that onto consent. That speeds up the process. And unless no one objects, I'll entertain a motion to amend the agenda accordingly.
Second, Garcia.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Oh, all right.
Chair Joseph, just a
Yes.
quick question, if I may. Can we just get council confirmation that there was nothing in there that would be problematic just from a legal perspective? That's all right, Chair.
Good point.
Right, yeah, they're all, the action items are contracts, as the chair mentioned, so it's the board's prerogative whether they want to move those to consent, and unless a board member
Yes.
would like to pull an item and discuss it specifically.
And Member Doring, do you have a concern with a particular item or just don't like the idea of pushing everything to consent?
Well, you're talking about all the regular agenda items, all the regular agenda items moving to consent, or when you say business items, what are you talking about?
Just yes, the regular agenda items.
Well, I had a couple questions on a couple of the items that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Intended to stop those probably. I don't.
Right, okay.
Agree with them, but I had a couple
Some
questions
clarification.
on, the Transportation Development Act process, and then the Transportation Fund Clean Air Act process. More process questions than substantive.
So we,
Are those items
Yeah.
12.3 and 12.4?
Yes.
Okay, so
Let's-
we could probably
yeah, let's
pull
pull,
those
yeah.
and then the rest could go.
fair enough.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, let's pull 12.3 and 12.4.
As a point of order, that we not move and second the.
We did. So at this point, Gonna
Chair,
really get everybody.
I'm happy to
confused.
make a revised motion to
Yeah.
pull those items for separate consideration.
I second that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of amending what we just amended, let's say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any opposed? Okay, good. Then we will briefly discuss items 12.3 and 12.4, but we'll do that after the two presentations. So if I haven't gotten everybody confused yet, I'll keep working on it. All right, now we're into public comment. Do we have any public comments? Anybody from in the audience, anybody online?
We do not.
All right, good. Nobody has to hear how confusing I've been. All right, next, chairperson, board members, and other comments. I'll start off by just pointing out, I hope in the future I don't create this much chaos over the agenda. But more importantly, what I see my role in is trying to create a more cohesive board, in part because I think we have 6 new members that came last year. I think we're going to have 1 or 2 members transitioning next year. So we have a lot of new people. And therefore, I think it's appropriate as the chair and hopefully as our vice chair, that part of our job is to kind of get everybody acclimated, a little bit of background and history to the extent that we can, and just kind of get everybody feeling like we're part of a team and that there are techniques for getting things done. It's easy for people to feel like we're not getting our fair share of the process and the resources. And so to some extent, I will try to help do that. Obviously, staff would be more qualified to do that, but sometimes it starts at the elected level and filters down. So that's pretty much what I envision my job to be over the next 2 years. And with that, I would ask if any board members have any comments.
I got one. Thank you, Chair. And yeah, it was my request to maybe move the closed session up in the agenda, but if we can kind of condense some of the material, for example, 12.6 is the legislative update. We're provided that in about 30 pages of written document that I'm sure we can all read, and then to have, a 20 minutes presentation on that material seems to be something where we can better utilize the time. And I apologize. Thank you for moving up the meeting to 1 o'clock too. That helps us a lot. But because of other commitments, it's important that myself and Supervisor Greger get out. So thank you for that. So if we can kind of, as the new chair, I like that approach. If we can kind of keep things moving.
I agree. And I think it's working itself out.
Thank you.
All right, MTC, do we have a report?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I'll just, look, I agree with the efficiency of running meetings, but we are a regional body, and I think if you load too much on consent, you lose sight of some of the significance of these things. So I think it's a balancing act that we all need to strive, but I know you're up for the challenge, Chair, so good luck to you. On MTC, a lot's been going on. We finally put the housing bond on the ballot. We had 85 speakers. And it was incredible to have that much public participation. But honestly, what was the best is everyone was so disciplined and civil around the conversation. We had some folks that expressed concern about taxes and property taxes and so forth. But it was really good to see the community, the region, want to come together around the housing crisis. So that was really promising. We did create a special select committee that's looking at transportation, the fiscal cliff, and efficiencies that we can do around the transportation space. Commissioner Spearing from Solana County chairs that committee. In addition, one of the things that I brought up at the last commission meeting is I'm very concerned about some of the cost for some of these mega projects. These are critical projects that we need to do, whether it's BART to San Jose or SMART to Healdsburg. We need to do these projects. But the fact is sometimes they don't pencil today, and we're judging them based off the cost benefit of today, when in fact you have to have a different perspective. When they were doing BART in the 50s or 60s, I bet you that didn't pencil and everyone was complaining about the cost, but look at it now. So we're going to be looking at some of the costs for these mega projects, trying to see where we have more efficiencies, because there's a lot of funders that participate, and sometimes there's just overlap and efficiencies aren't there. We're unique where we have an executive director that understands mega project delivery. Not every agency has that. So there's some efficiencies that we're going to be looking at, but it's something that I'm committed to doing in the last 4 months that we have. Mary Garcia reminded me that I think we have 4 meetings left, so I'm excited about that too. Happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Yes, I attended the General Assembly. Certainly, there was a lot of cheering about the housing bond moving forward. Presentation was how different jurisdictions are handling approaches to attaining the appropriate number of housing related to low income and workforce housing. So it's going to be an exciting time in the Bay Area. I think there's evidence of a funding base being possible that jurisdictions can take advantage of to their benefit. So, and that was good. That was basically the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Executive Director's update.
Good afternoon. Just real short update today. On June 11th, staff was invited to watch the park tread being installed on the Vine Trail. And I'm going to let Grant talk about this in greater detail when he provides you with his project update. But when you drive by and you see long swaths of dirt along the trail, that's actually park tread, and it's pretty cool stuff. And it's supposed to be maybe better than last longer than asphalt, so we'll see. It's a little bit more expensive. And Grant has some pictures to show you. So anyway, there will be single lane closures on southbound 221 Soscol beginning on July 26th through August 9th. And on July 26th at night, the signals on State Route 29 and State Route 221 will be removed, and the roundabouts will be open to traffic. The northbound State Route 221 connector will remain closed until mid-September, so that's pretty exciting news. Transit signal priority system in American Canyon. This is a system that we worked with American Canyon on and Caltrans that will allow transit vehicles that are running behind schedule that are located in the vicinity of the signals to extend the signal to allow the bus to travel through the light. And that will be, they will go live in August. So, and we're not meeting in August, so I just want to make sure you are aware of that. The Accessible Transit Needs Assessment open house that we held on July 8th was well attended. And we got a lot of good comments to inform our plan. Staff has concluded its jurisdiction check-ins. For those of you who weren't able to participate, we did do round robin at each jurisdiction to talk about projects and priorities. I think we learned a lot, and it was, I think, a really good exchange, and we will continue to do that maybe more frequently than we did this last time. And then just a reminder that the ribbon cutting to celebrate the opening of the Calistoga to St. Helena Vine Trail project has been scheduled for August 16th at 10:30. It will be in Calistoga at the depot. The Vine Trail Coalition has scheduled a pre-event ride from St. Helena to Calistoga beginning at 8:30. And I know that at least 4 staff members will be participating in that. And they're also holding a lunch following the event, and you might have gotten an invitation. We're not responsible for it. We're not paying for any of it. So more information will follow from the Vine Trail Coalition. The lunch is not open to the public, and that is something the Vine Trail made clear to us. And then on August 17th, the Vine Trail Coalition is also organizing a public event. And that concludes my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? All right. Then we move to Caltrans update. Is Caltrans on?
Caltrans is not on, but however, the report is in your handout packet.
Okay, perfect. Then you can review that at your leisure. All right, now we move to presentations. We have 2 presentations from staff. The first is the NVTA project update. Grant, you're on.
Good afternoon, Chair Joseph, Vice Chair Chateau, and directors of the board. I'm Grant Bailey, Program Manager Engineer for the Napa Valley Transportation Authority, and I'll be providing a project update. Next slide, please. So a couple new projects we'll talk about that you may have seen in previous regular business items, but we'll actually talk about them today in a little more detail. So the Soscol Gateway Transit Center Building Modifications Project, which this is the Soscol Gateway Transit Center that we're in here. And back in March of 23, the board approved an architectural design contract to make some improvements to this building, mainly to develop the open space that's used for usually storage and informal meetings on the south end of the building, but also to reduce noise levels in an effort to accommodate our growing workforce as well as the work mode shift following the COVID pandemic. Some of the benefits we're looking to obtain through this project is adding working space for staff, reducing noise levels and in the office, and then also expand our bus driver break room, which is adjacent to or just kind of on the other side of the breezeway here. Schedule for this project. So we just completed design last month and obtained a building permit from the city of Napa. We are working to release this contract for bid in July this month and then award the construction contract at the next board meeting in September. Construction is anticipated to take between 4 and 5 months, and we're looking forward to having improvements complete in the late winter, early spring of 2025. The pre-construction or design costs for this project were $120,000. And then the construction estimate, including construction oversight and inspection, is estimated at $1 million, but we'll have a much better idea of what those costs are once we have bids for the project. A few photos or elevation views of some of the acoustical panels. They're kind of a honeycomb panel that are stuck to the walls here. The upper photo is actually the back side of the wall right behind me in the lobby. And then the lower photo is the second story administrative offices, the wall that kind of runs along the west side of the offices, and just kind of a rendering of where we plan to install these tiles to help reduce noise levels within the office. Next slide, please. And just to dive into the scope a little bit, and I know the lower photo shows the improvements themselves, but it might be a little bit hard to see. So we're going to be adding 2 office spaces in the first floor south side of the building, a meeting space that can accommodate up to 10 people, a restroom with toilet, shower, and changing room, and also that expanded bus driver break room and a wellness room, which will actually be just on the other side of the lobby here underneath the stairs, and then the acoustical treatments as well. Next slide, please. And then the Redwood Park and Ride Improvements Project. This is another new project that, well, we would have talked about the design contract that we are asking the board to approve later in the meeting, but it got moved to consent. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about that now. So currently at the Redwood Park and Ride, there are no restroom facilities. That stop is a time point stop. It's typical for our drivers to use the restroom, but there isn't one at this facility, so they have to go offsite to find other accommodations. So the main scope of this project will be to install a modular restroom with 3 restroom facilities or individual rooms, 2 for the public and 1 for private use for NVTA and TransDev employees only. We will also be working to update striping and signage to improve circulation through the park and ride and minimize or eliminate potential conflict areas between vehicles and other travel modes, as well as updating our electronic transit information display or ETID signs, which provide real-time updates for transit for the buses coming to and from the park and ride. Pending award of this contract that is in front of you later in the meeting, we'll kick off design next month. That's expected to take about 7 to 8 months of design, taking us into spring of 2025. We'll work to bid and award that contract by June of 2025 and then go into construction in the summer of next year. The pre-construction cost or design and environmental analysis costs with this project is approximately $240,000, and construction is anticipated to cost about $700,000. Next slide, please. Moving on to some of our projects that are currently in construction. So the Napa Valley College bus stop project broke ground last, 2 weeks ago now, the 1st of July. They are currently working on earthwork to export soils from the site and working towards building up the retaining wall structures and bus pads here in the coming weeks. They're also working on exposing some existing utilities. A couple of them are going to be removed and then a few will be relocated as well. And right now we're targeting substantial completion for this project of August 9th, or 2 days in front of our next schedule change, which will implement revised service to this stop, providing northbound and southbound service, eliminating a 10-minute per transit vehicle loop from this stop. Pre-construction costs, design costs for this project were $100,000. The bid that the board delegated authority for Director Miller to award, I think it was in the May meeting, that we got a bid for about $648,000 from the Granite Rock Construction. And so construction costs about $650,000. And then now we have a construction support contract for construction management and inspection of $120,000 for a total project cost of $870,000. Next slide, please. There's a few photos of the work in progress out there. So starting on the left, just the first real week of work, excuse me there. The contractor had cleared and grubbed the site, and then moving that center photo, you can see they're doing some earthwork, exposed some of those utilities that are going to be removed and relocated. And then on the right, just another shot, I think, of the next day of that earthwork activity going on out there. Next slide, please. Moving on to the Saucil Junction project. This project is making good progress. As Director Miller had mentioned, the next significant work activity is to transition, or I guess remove the existing signal at 221 and 29. That will happen on the night of July 26th, at which time southbound 221 traffic will be diverted into the roundabouts, and all the roundabouts will be opened for beneficial use, with the exception of the northbound 221 connector, which is targeted to open in mid-September. I'd also like to note that during the transition and connection period between July 26th and August 9th, there will be single lane closures on 221. Following August 9th, there will be 2-lane access from 221 into the interchange and the roundabouts. So be forewarned, there may be some congestion in that area, but just for a couple weeks. We're still targeting a ribbon cutting, although we don't have a date set yet, for late summer, early fall of this year, and contract completion is targeted for November of 2024. Next slide, please. And the final project I'll talk about is the Vine Trail St. Helena to Calistoga project, another project that is making great progress. We are still on track to hit the August 16th grand opening. Some recent milestones, we completed the trail barrier work, or about 99% of it. There are a couple punch list items, and probably the big one is we are now out of native ground disturbance territory, building the trail up, and which has virtually eliminated the possibility of new underground utility conflicts and unearthing of archaeological artifacts. It's good news for the project. Current work that's ongoing is installation of the park tread, which is one of the 3 types of surfaces that will be going in on the trail. As Director Miller also mentioned, on July 11th, we met last week with the park tread installer, had a demonstration of how that material is installed. It's very similar to asphalt. You can see on the right-hand photo there's a truck backed up to a paver. And then you don't see it in this photo, you'll see it in the next slide. Smooth drum rollers kind of roll through and compact that material. It is kind of thank you, Kathy. It's a novel material in itself. It uses a corn-based binder that interacts with the silts and other soils in the aggregate mix to create a cementitious type material. It is very durable, has a nice finished surface, kind of like almost like a medium broom finish to concrete. Once it's cured, it takes about 3 days to cure after being compacted, and reports are that it can withstand up to 80,000 pound vehicle loads. If we could back up one slide. Thank you, Kathy. Looking forward, following the park tread installation this week and moving into next week, there will be final trail paving that's happening, which will happen starting middle of next week and into the following week. There will also be pavers installed. So by the end of this month, we should have virtually all of the trail surfaces paved out, which will take us into installation of striping and signage and cleanup of the trail as we prepare for the grand opening. Two risks that I would like to talk to the board about this afternoon that I think it's very important. We discuss first is the PG&E claim. Just to give you an update on where we stand there. So this is a sequential process that we're working through to finalize a claim with First Gelati Construction. We are in the final negotiation phases of that claim. We're meeting with them tomorrow in the hopes of finalizing terms for that claim probably in the next week or two. And then at the September board meeting, we will take an item to the board for final approval of that claim settlement, which will include a monetary settlement. And then following NVTA and Gelati Construction being able to agree on terms, we will then take the total cost of that claim and staff costs as well as consultant costs to support additional work needed to work through the issues with the underground utility conflicts to PG&E. So a total claim cost to PG&E and submit that to them, and then we will start that process. And that'll probably be in mid-August, I would assume, is when we'll really start that. And then the other risk is our Vine Trail contract contingency. Back in March, the board approved a second contract contingency request. Right now, we are tracking based on our current contract change orders an overage of our contract contingency of about $180,000. However, that we're working on realizing a cost savings through what's referred to as bid quantity underruns. And that is kind of a fancy way of saying there's work that was contemplated in the contract that we are not going to perform, so we will save money on that. That's mostly in the form of retaining wall deletions. We're estimating a savings of somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000. So we're currently forecasting to be, I guess, in the black about $200,000. The one caveat there is that paving, the paving that's going to happen starting next week is it is one of the operations that has a high potential for cost overruns. So we may eat into that. I'm feeling fairly confident right now that we will still be, we'll still have our contingency available for use. We won't overrun the forecast savings. However, in the worst case event, following the paving and working through the actual costs of that operation, if we find that we have overrun our contingency, staff may call an emergency board meeting in August to approve additional contingency for that overrun. That was a lot to digest, I know. So I think that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions on any of these projects, especially the Vine Trail. Thanks.
We have Director Ryan.
Thank you, Grant. Is the park tread's really interesting. We've been talking about it for a while. Is it considered a pilot in the sense that we installed a little bit just to see how it works?
I don't know if you could go so far to say it's a pilot, because at Silver Oak Cellars, I think above Dunawheel, there's a test patch that was actually put in, I think 5 or 6 years ago. It was sponsored by the Vine Trail in coordination with Silver Oak. And so, they've been running agricultural vehicles over it and probably some of their other vehicles as well, just to see how it holds up. And so I think based on the results from that, test patch, they felt it was a good enough material to actually install in the trail itself.
Okay, cool. And yeah, that's good to know. I can't wait to try it. Kate?
Can people turn? Yeah, the first time they installed the park tread, according to the person who created this material, was over 20 years ago, though, in Marin. So I don't think it's at an experimental stage. And it's been used in a lot of public parks and,
Presidio Park is, I
Yeah.
think, probably the best example. There's, I think, maybe several miles of it throughout the park, Land's End area.
Okay. A second question, related to the northbound 221 that's going to be closed for a while.
Mhm.
Will a detour be posted to directing them to Devlin Road to get on northbound 221?
If you're referring to like access from Soswell Ferry and Devlin, I think there will be a detour to access northbound 221. I think you have to drive down Devlin to airport and then back up 29 north to the current
Right.
exit ramp. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Director Eisenberg, then
Thank-
Alessio.
Thank you. Just a quick question about Park Tread. Is that Park Tread that goes from that last northbound section on 29 to Dunawheel? Is that an example, or that's going to be paved? It's right now, it felt like very compacted dirt when I saw it. I'm not sure. I guess I've just never seen an example of Park Tread to know what it even looks like.
Can you restate the location?
When the Vine Trail exits 29, goes over a small bridge, goes through Tui,
To me, yes.
and then terminates, that section ends on Dunawheel, and then goes over the bridge that was built a while back, and then goes up to the,
Yes, that is that section through the vineyard there, after you've crossed the smaller bridge, that is all the Park Tread there.
so that is Park Tread.
That is
Okay.
Park Tread, yes. And another location that's pretty prominent is, I guess, just north of the city of St. Helena limits, past, I guess across from Behringer and up Krug, or in front of Krug.
Okay,
through there.
thank you. My other question is, when are the hawk lights going to be powered? And the reason I say this is because I have seen people cross dangerously because it's an attractive nuisance right now, having the Vine Trail partially opened. And I'm just hoping for safety's sake that as soon as possible, those could possibly be turned on and discourage people from crossing randomly.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think I would like to clarify the Vine Trail is not open there.
I fully understand that.
Yeah.
But people are people.
Of course. And so to answer your question, the I guess turn on and commissioning of the hawk lights are scheduled for the 13th and 14th, immediately prior to the grand opening. Part of that is to discourage use of the trail. However, your comment is noted, and I will go speak to our contractor to see if they can get some barricades up at those crossings to deter crossings there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, Director Alessio.
Thank you. Grant, thank you for the report. These are great projects, very impactful. I remember us being presented those and approving those, everything from the facilities here and onward. On the Redwood Park and Ride and the bathroom, that's long overdue, so I'm glad we're moving forward with that. I am a little concerned about passengers because you said that need facilities. You talked about it's just for employees. But I do think that passengers, I'd like there to be an opportunity for passengers who need to use the restroom can use the restroom that's on site at the Park and Ride. Is that a possibility?
Yes, and sorry, I must have been unclear. So there, I think what we're working towards right now is 3 individual restrooms.
Okay.
2 will be for the public, probably one male, one female, possibly unisex. Not quite sure there. And then 1 will be strictly for NVTA and TransDev employees.
Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
And then on the areas that you talked about risk, negotiating or with PG&E, is the risk the cost it's going to take us for those negotiations to happen? Is that where the risk is at? I wasn't really clear what you meant by that, putting that in the category of risk. And maybe Oz can answer that too. Maybe it's or the executive director can help us with that in terms of areas of potential risks the agency has on that.
I'll take a stab at it. So I think, the risk with the PG&E claim is, we haven't settled anything with PG&E at this point, and there's a possibility that they could come back and say, we don't find any merit in your claim. So there's risk there. And then there's also risk with, the Gelati claim in that we are currently working to negotiate down what they feel is, their their claim and where we, try and meet in the middle. So far, we've been very successful with Gelati, and I think we're, very close to coming to agreeable terms. But that being said, nothing has been finalized, right? And so.
Okay.
Please.
And I just want to emphasize that we are doing everything we can to minimize that risk. We've already hired counsel that specialize in this area. And we have been keeping PG&E in the loop all the way along, and we are doing our best that we can, working with Gelati to get PG&E a finalized request as fast as possible.
Yeah,
But it
thank you.
hasn't been easy.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know that there's been a lot of communication and outreach and updates with both Gelati and PG&E throughout this process. And I appreciate that extra work and communication that you've had. On the other end, what was the second risk again?
The construction contingency.
Correct.
So the risk there is that
Oh, you talked about barriers that you need to remove. We're going to save about $350,000 because of not
retaining
moving
wall
forward with.
additions.
Yes. What are those again?
It was a retaining wall. I don't know if we deleted any one retaining wall in total, but it was basically reduction in height of some of those retaining walls and some modifications here and there that reduced the total amount of walls that we needed to build. And that has resulted in a substantial cost savings.
Are those a safety measure? Is that why we initially had those in the plan? And is there maybe a potential of if it is a safety issue of a future project?
It is not a safety issue. It's more of a civil improvement. And what I mean by that is basically we just needed to build up areas to allow for the trail to be flat. Building it up against an embankment that has limited clearance. So we had to build a wall to retain the soil to make a flat trail area. A good example of this is along Dunwheel, just north of Toomey Vineyard. There's a retaining wall that runs through there, and actually on the other side of the bridge as well. We have limited right of way there, and so rather than having a slope that kind of extends into the vineyards, we built a retaining wall adjacent to the vineyards to preserve as many vines as we could.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the explanation. And again, I know this has been a very challenging project. NVTA's learned a lot, and you've sacrificed a lot to do this. So I appreciate your work. And if we're able to call it grants passed, though someone else has used that name, I would nominate that.
Thanks.
But thank you for your answering those questions.
Okay, no problem.
And just to be clear, assuming all those risks go positive and we end up with money left over, what's our intent as far as how we allocate those savings, if there are any?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The first, first step will be to return any and all funding contributed during the construction phase to the jurisdictions who have contributed following the start of construction.
Perfect. Okay. And then Director Pedroza, did you have some questions?
No, I think just on the restrooms, the public restrooms, just understanding what's the responsibility for cleaning and making sure they stay in good shape and they're not vandalized. There's just been a lot of examples where the intent is good, then it just becomes a maintenance issue. So I'm assuming we have some plan in place for that. So you don't need to spend too much time, but that was just a comment. And then on the detours, I don't know if we're planning beyond just posting, but in other organizations, what I've seen them do some videos and they show the detours, like there's some funny, creative kind of modeling. Think about like when we fly Southwest and they make, the whole entertainment thing is a little funny. I think something like that, where it's a little bit more interactive, I think would be a really neat thing to do in the future as we talk about these closures, because it is an impact to the public. It's an incredible thing we're doing, but if we can lessen the pain that people feel when they're experiencing, the detours, I think would be a positive thing. So I don't know if we have the capability to do any videos around that, but
I'll work with Caltrans on that and see, what they can provide as far as more interactive notifications around these.
And I appreciate you reaching out to Caltrans. I think it would be great to make an investment locally. If we're going to keep doing these things, I think being able to have the capability to do that, so we're not relying on another agency where the matter of fact, it's just not going to be a priority. So again, something to think about in the future.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments? Okay, well, this was for information only. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that, all the updates. Next item is a discussion on transit-oriented development, which Kate, Director Miller, I think you're starting it, or?
Yeah, and I'm sure that Tony will help me field any questions. So when we last met, we discussed the potential for expanding this facility to become a transit-oriented development. And there was a request from the board to provide an overview on Todd's. So the primary reason we would want to build housing in the vicinity of the Saskell Gateway Transit Center is it would provide riders to feed the Vine Transit system and reduce traffic congestion and generate revenues that could be used to actually improve the Vine Transit operations, make the system operate more frequent, extend hours. Transit agencies, cities, and developers all play lead roles in developing TODs. And financial support from regional state agencies is essential when the housing component supports lower income workers. Next slide. Yeah, stay on that one. Stay on that one. Transit-oriented developments are a proven method to reduce driving, increasing transit ridership, and walking and biking. And according to the Bay Area Travel Survey, residents both living and working within a half a mile of a transit-oriented development use transit for almost half the time for their work trips and use transit significantly more for non-work trips. One obvious element is the proximity to the transit stop, but another is lower vehicle ownership when they are appropriate parking ratios. Reduced car ownership results in less driving, but it also reduces the economic burden of owning a car when you are a low-income family. In addition to the proximity to transit, keys to successful TODs require residential density, diversity, which is a mix of land uses, including residential, commercial, and open space, and design, which includes access and amenities. Next slide. This property, when it was originally envisioned in 2005, included the transit center and a mixed-use development. But when the agency finally developed the transit center, talks to acquire the property next door were unsuccessful. The Napa Intermodal Transit Center and Mixed-Use Development Plan is summarized in this report. And it was prepared for Napa County Transportation Planning Agency at the time. That was our prior name, and in partnership with the city of Napa. The design included in this plan is no longer feasible. Originally, the bus bays were envisioned as a more narrow band on the east side of the facility along Brunel, with housing surrounding the bays on 4th Streets and on the west side of the facility to 6th Street. The design also envisioned housing up to 4 stories, included 35 to 45 units, a public plaza, commercial spaces, and diagonal street parking. It also tied the bus and housing development to the rail line, something that NVTA staff currently envisioned in discussions with the Wine Train on its proposed workforce housing development, which is proposed for the area just west of the transit center where the white parking lot is. And so those, I believe they're still working with the city on that, and we have a meeting scheduled with the Wine Train on that just to get an update. Nevertheless, the plan and existing environmental documents have some elements that do remain salvageable. Next slide. In addition to the aforementioned benefits of increasing alternative travel modes, a new development on the east side would foster economic activity, improve land uses consistent with city zoning, and elevate property values and improve the health of the residents that live here. Next slide. The next few slides provide an overview of some of the planned and completed developments in the Bay Area, all TOD developments. BART has developed a number of TODs in partnership with developers on property owned by BART and on properties adjacent to their stations. These two, the Contra Costa Center Transit Village has 622 rental units and commercial office space. And then the Castro Valley facility has 100% affordable housing. Next slide. These two developments were completed by the city of San Jose and the city of Emeryville. Valley Transportation Authority has a rail station adjacent to the Santana Road development. This is a very popular destination for local residents because the retail design resulted in creating a neighborhood with upscale retail and dining. The Estrella Vista or Estrella Vista in Emeryville is closer to, it's actually on Amtrak line, and is closer to what NVTA would be able to accomplish on the proposed property, mostly housing and a nominal amount of street level retail. Next slide. Transit-oriented developments are popping up all over the country and may cater specifically to local clientele, such as the Price Place senior housing developed by Sound Transit to house older lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community members. Similarly, the Seattle Cedar Crossing, also Sound Transit, was intended to support the growing need for housing among university workers and students and includes a daycare facility and a learning center. Next slide. We also wanted to illustrate that even when transit systems have less land to develop, they can be successful. The facility in Concord, Massachusetts only has 20 rental units, but offers mixed-use retail, office facilities. And the Fruitvale Village, which is located just in front of the Fruitvale BART station on International Boulevard in Oakland, has become the center of Fruitvale community, providing 47 mixed income housing units and 40,000 square feet of retail. And the retail corridor also serves as a more inviting access point to get to the BART station. Next slide. I know that there were some questions about whether developing a TOD is within the purview of NVTA, so I pulled some of the language from our JPA, which specifies the agency's involvement in policy and planning activities related to land use, economic development, community development, and environmental issues, in addition to intermodal transportation. It further specifies that NVTA has the authority to acquire, improve, hold, lease, and dispose of real property. Next slide. So we've outlined how we currently envision the role of NVTA, which is based on the typical model of other transit-related TOD developments in the region. This is not a comprehensive list, just a general overview, and also the critical role that developers play, including design, construct, and managing the TOD. Next slide. Next steps involve an appraisal, which is currently underway, and then preparing a geoanalysis of the site to understand environmental mitigation requirements. And then we would prepare a preliminary site design, identify funding opportunities, and develop a revenue model. Next slide. That concludes the presentation, and we are happy to respond to any questions that you have.
All right, very good. We have some comments.
Yeah.
Director Pedrosa.
Thank you, Chair Joseph. Director Miller, thank you. I think this is exciting. I remember growing up, I wanted a 3-bedroom home with a big backyard, and then life gets in the way. And then you realize you have to maintain this big backyard, and it's not what I need anymore. So to have a housing product that's potentially different, I think is part of evolution. So I know at MTC and through some of the regional housing initiatives, we're looking to fund pilot programs like this. So I think it would be so cool to be able to have something where you can get funding, seed funding or development funding from a regional body where it's not local dollars being used. And look, it may work, it may not, but part of the journey we're on to address the housing crisis is try different solutions. So I do think transit-oriented development in communities is not the answer to everything, but it's part of the answer. And to be able to have this agency be on the front end of innovation, which is something we've always wanted to do, I see this as something where we're going to learn a lot. We absolutely have to work with the city of Napa. This isn't the city of Napa, but to be able to act on this and learn from it and maybe scale it and replicate it somewhere else. I'm thinking about properties like the Wine Train owns. There's a lot of other potential. So, I wish I can be around for this when it comes back next year, I think, because I'll be in public comment maybe. I think this is a really cool thing to learn for our community. And last part, when you talk about younger families, this could be a solution for younger families that may not want to have a car, which reduces our climate goals and greenhouse gas emissions. So I just don't see any front end risk on this. I think there's tremendous upside on moving forward with this. So.
Yeah, and just to the rail nexus element, I think that if we move forward, if this board is interested in moving forward with a project like this, that we really should plan for rail passenger, amenities and include that in the project.
Great. Thank you for bringing this forward.
Right. Next, Director Sedgley.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't think any of us will disagree that TODs are, they're a good thing. And they do provide that kind of that housing component in conjunction with transportation. But most of the examples are shown in bigger cities. We're kind of a small scale one, but not to say that couldn't work. So I think, that's preaching to the choir as far as we all think that's a good idea. Where I had an issue, and nearly half of this board had an issue last meeting, was on the process. And in this that came out today, this handout seems to justify some of that. It's almost a little bit of a cart before the horse, how we got it last time. I mean, the authority of the JPA obviously can justify maybe a land purchase. But what I had issue with was that where was the collaboration with the stakeholders ahead of this move? And so because this is, proposed right in the middle of the city of Napa, our nonprofit housing developers, our community development folks, all of those people should be, and I imagine they will be eventually after NVTA spends the money to do the phase 1 and 2 and design and be protected design. So that's what I struggled with. And I know the board narrowly move forward with going down this path, but I think for it to be successful, it's going to have to be a lot more discussion on. Director Pedroza said take a chance, it might work. We'll see what we learn from it. It's kind of an expensive learning exercise if it doesn't hold up. So, we're going down this path, but those were my concerns. And I think we've looked at this property for a long time as housing. The neighboring property owner to the west, they're looking at a housing model that's there. It could be combined with that development. So I just thought we were a little early jumping out on this acquisition. Thank you.
And now I can talk.
I just remind the board that we haven't jumped ahead on acquiring the property. That's still something that needs to come back to this board for discussion based on the research that we're doing. And, I agree that if we had a long-term vision of doing this, that we would have been out and talking to a lot of other people that were now accelerating those talks. But we didn't reach out to the property owner. The property owner reached out to us, and then we had this opportunity. So that's why we brought it to the board. And now we're just in that early preliminary stages. And the unfortunate thing is that, this body would have to make a decision about acquiring that property, no matter what process we went through, and it's going to be, risky. It's risky in a way that, we will be investing in a property, and then all of the other associated development on that is going to just have to fall into place. But I think that there is a lot of tried and true models that we can follow, and a lot of support that we can get to make sure that this is that the project comes to fruition in a healthy way for the agency.
And I would just agree with that. I think the timing things fell into our lap. It wasn't that we went out and pursued this and then didn't consider stakeholders. I think it's just the timing. And I admit, because of that timing, there wasn't a lot of prep work. And I think to Director Sedgley's point, moving forward, we certainly need to include all those stakeholders. And I do think that it should be a collaborative process in that respect. But step one is making sure this is a feasible project. And part of that is the legal feasibility. Do we as an entity have the authority to pursue this? And I think the answer is yes. It doesn't mean we should, just that we have that authority. The next step is to figure out, is the site, does it have any fatal flaws? And then if that's a go, then we start talking about the details. And simultaneously, we can be working with stakeholders to make sure that we can develop the parcel, or that somehow the parcel is developed in a manner consistent with a transit-oriented development because frankly, that's in our best interest. You know, the best way to have a successful transit is to make sure we have a lot of customers. And a TOD is a great way to basically put them on your doorstep. So I do think the concept's important. I think, you know, frankly, I'm kind of an advocate of government being more entrepreneurial, so I'm philosophically sympathetic to it, but it also has to pencil. So this is the first step. Learn more about the topic, work through some of the issues. But we also have another comment from Director Alessi.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. I gotta go like this, my neck. Kate, thank you, Executive Director, for the presentation. I think this was really helpful to see all the proven projects that have been done in the area. And I know, you know, it was said that we're kind of small, but you know, Napa was the first to establish the Ag Preserve. Napa was the first to have a flood project that included Oxbow Commons. Just because we're smaller doesn't mean that we can't be innovative. And frankly, this is not that innovative because it's been around for a while. And we know we're seeking housing that can be deed restricted, affordable. We need more housing for folks. I have children and adult children, and frankly, one of them doesn't drive. He doesn't drive because it's too expensive between the car payments, the car insurance, and everything else. It's just too expensive for him, and he really doesn't have an interest in driving. He would rather live in an area that has public transportation and get him to work. And I think that a lot of his friends are very much the same. So I feel like it actually fills a void that we have here. I actually feel it also checks a lot of boxes around housing and transportation and reducing air pollution. I feel like it checks a lot of boxes. Of course, we need to check our own boxes based on the process already described to even see if it's feasible. But I really appreciate it being brought forward for us to be given this education. It's new to me too. And I really hope it works out and we can move forward. Thank you.
All right, we'll have Vice Chair Chateau and then Director Ryan and Garcia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for this. I continue to be excited about it. I appreciate Mayor Sedgley, you talking about how it was the process and you have different thoughts today after receiving this information. I see this being something that's great for us as a smaller jurisdiction because as a very small city, we aren't competitive for dollars when we want to do housing and we're limited about the amount of land that we actually have for housing up Valley. And so I see us working regionally as something that'll make us more competitive. And also we have great jobs up Valley. So having people and families and workers be able to live right there on transit and then come up Valley and have more dollars to actually make it be more reliable, more options, faster options, so it can work within family life is a huge benefit for us. So I'm really excited about this and hope we can keep moving forward.
All right, Director Ryan.
Thank you. I posed a question last meeting, which was that the city's new general plan zoned mixed use multifamily with residential supporting local serving retail or something like that, already geared towards resulting in the project we've all just been talking about. So I posed this question, why would NVTA get in the middle of it and sort of get out of our lane? One thing that was alluded to, it's one bullet point that, Kate, I've got a question for you on. Maybe this is one of the answers to that question. Provide a stable funding source for transit. So what did you learn about other transit agencies? What revenues have they realized that have furthered their mission?
So, I mean, it's, you negotiate that with the developer, but there is the opportunity to have retail and even commercial space. And those revenue, you know, you have a lease typically is where the revenues come from. And like I said, it's negotiated with the developer. And I think it depends on, you know, how much revenue generation there is involved in both the housing elements and the commercial elements. And until we like get to that place where we actually have an idea of the number of units, the kind of mix it will be, like if it's, 50% affordable or for very low income, that changes the numbers. But I think all of that is a negotiated item, and it's very specific to the design of individual facilities.
Chair Joseph, thank you for giving me the nod to speak. What I'll tell you, Supervisor Gregory, part of it is incentivizing transit usage and increasing ridership. I think that's been part of the measurement. Some of the ones that we've seen in some of these bigger cities is where they do affordable housing, they pair them up with like a ridership discount for public transit. So it's like a double win, right? They're having affordable housing there, and then they're able to use public transit at a greater frequency because it's being subsidized. That's where I think the opportunities are endless. I think we have to first explore it. That's what I take away from this, Director Millers, we have to understand what the process is, but we can't let the process get in the way of progress. And also, when we talk about affordability, I think we all know in our individual jurisdictions, sometimes the cost to build one affordable housing unit is $500,000. I don't know what this is going to cost, but we need to find out. And then we can answer those questions because we're all trying to solve this problem that's hard. And it's not always a function of more money. It's a function of new concepts. And I think that's what this new concept is going to provide us. So thank you.
Yeah, and when I was actually doing research, again, it's just very surface research. We didn't have a whole lot of time to turn this around. We talked to MTC, we talked to a couple of housing developers. We talked to BART. And one of the things that we need to acknowledge on the outset is how long these take to develop. I mean, we've been working on this for I use MTC's model when I was in graduate school to do my master's degree. So that's how long we've been working on this. And we've evolved, right? We've evolved a lot, but, and the quality of the TODs have evolved a lot. It used to be where you just had to be within a certain proximity of a station. Now there's, mixed use requirements, and all of those elements were something that I actually had factored into my thesis. And it's nice to see that all of those elements are really now a requirement for these developments, but it does slow down the process a little bit. But I think, what the jump start is the agency's going to contribute the land, right? That's the model. And that right there is huge for a developer of low income housing. And that would incentivize probably a lot of grants from state and local governments, especially if the housing measure passes. That could be huge.
Okay, Director Garcia.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments so far. For me, it really speaks to the due diligence that we would need to pursue to be able to answer these questions to make this, I think, it's definitely worth supporting. Being a transit center, it's bus and rail potentially. The State Route 37, also known as Resilient 37, has had input from organizations regarding rail line between Novato and Sassoon. Viable option. Would it take a while to convert it? Yeah. There's also a transit opportunity here for us to connect with that. There's a great advantage with that. I think when you have here's an example. We had a city clerk in American Canyon a number of years ago. He lived in Sacramento, took the Capitol Corridor every day to Solano. Had a car there. She parked in the parking lot. I don't know what the arrangements were, but that's the agreement she had. Drive her car over to American Canyon, go home in the evening and avoid all that congested highway traffic all the way to Sacramento. Back and forth, there's opportunity with that. And there's a network here that could be explored. Admittedly, not something that's an overnight solution, but the existing lines are there already. And that's the presentation we've had received a time or two on the SR 37 leading to Novato to Fairfield. So I think it's due diligence, and I would be, I'm enthusiastic about us moving forward with that process, and we will find more answers to our questions in that process as well. Thank you.
All right.
If I just may have one
go
more. Increasing ridership, I mean, that's been a goal, for a lot of us here. How do we increase ridership? It's been a challenge, after the pandemic also. Will a housing project near a transportation center increase ridership? To a degree, but how do you really increase ridership? I don't know if you saw the article from Petaluma. They're doing a 1-year pilot program, no fare, to increase ridership. The idea is if you get people on the bus for a free fare, maybe in a little while, then you can start to roll back in fares and get them used to riding it. But I will bring that up at a later time for a future agenda item to discuss the opportunity for, the fare box issue here and dropping it to increase ridership. I mean, that's one way to possibly do it. So, if the agency can buy land and donate it for a housing project, then maybe the agency can find a way to fund a 1-year pilot program for free fares.
All right. Any other comments on this?
Just, I raised a question about the Surplus Lands Act last time, and I was wondering if we've done any research on that. If we acquire the property and have to hold it for a while, do we have to make it available for anyone who's interested in putting affordable housing on the land?
My office is still looking into that. We'll be able to report back at September's meeting on it. So
The reason I ask that is I don't know if we're even in informal negotiations or discussions with any developers. For me personally, I'd rather have a developer already lined up because I think it's better practice in terms of risk. But if we do, then and then we have to open that up to the world, then those are two contrary points of view.
I don't believe we're in any discussions because we're in the preliminary stages with any. Yeah.
We're just getting an appraisal right now, and we can't really do anything until we actually own the property. And that's another decision point that this body has to make before we would move forward. We would do a competitive bid for a housing developer. And I think that would be the best approach, both from a design perspective, a concept perspective, and just an overall cost, right? On what, then we'll get a better idea of what we can actually get for this particular property. And then we will know also about the revenue stream. And I would just add that any revenue stream that came from this has to be plowed back into the transit system first anyway. And that would be a great fund source to subsidize fares. We currently don't have any revenues that are fungible for fare subsidies. And we also are subject to statutory fare box recovery law. So we can't put, if we reduce fares without some other fund source, we are out of compliance. So, and Scott, I'm happy, our director, Sedgley, I'm happy to talk about that with you more so you have a better understanding of it.
Okay, any other comments? All right, for me, like I said, I think this is a two-parter. The first part is going through and doing our due diligence as far as, is this feasible? Do we have the authority to do it? Is it, is there anything in the land that would scare you off? And ultimately, can we do this? And then from there, it becomes a question of, so who's the best player? Obviously, this is land that somebody will buy and want to develop. But if we pursue it, given our mission, it's going to clearly be focused on how do you enhance transit and how do you enhance affordability for housing. And what I like is that we don't have shareholders who worry about, are we maximizing our return? Our mission is more, can we get people in buses? Can we get people in affordable housing? And if we can generate a revenue stream that could conceivably be plowed back into those fares, it becomes a real benefit for this entity. And so, like I said, I think we've got to get through the first phase first, obviously, and then have some serious policy discussions about whether it's the best option to pursue. But I appreciate the information, because if we don't know what we're talking about, we'll talk for a long time and get nowhere. So with that in mind, we're now ready to approve the consent item, which as you may recall, also includes regular agenda items 12.1, 12.2, 12.5, and 12.6. So.
So
and I-
moved to approve the consent agenda.
All right,
I'll second.
excellent. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we'll move quickly to items 12.3 and 12.4. The question would be, would it expedite the process if Director Doring, you simply said, here are my questions, could somebody explain this to me? Or
I mean, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, great.
So, Patrick, yeah, thank you, Patrick. So the question I have, so there's a little bit of a quirk here. It's kind of peculiar. As I understand it, there's a prioritization for quick builds, and that was what
is correct.
this project is all, these projects are all about, awarding funds or allocating monies or seeking monies for quick builds. And yet, the quirk here is that we have one project that is a quick build, two projects that are not quick builds, and yet the two projects that are not quick builds are being awarded monies. And I guess the point, I'll just raise it, I could be wrong, and please correct me, you have that. So the city of St. Helena submitted a quick build project, but
That's correct.
And I would say kept it by the book and just focused on that. But there is a reality that St. Helena probably could have come up with a number of different projects beyond the minimal $50,000. And so in my view, there's a reward for projects that are not quick build and a sort of a punishment or a disincentive for the one that is. That's the quirkiness. And I'm not ungrateful. We'll take all the money we can get, and we need a lot of money in the city of St. Helena. But I just, from a process and philosophical point of view, I'm just raising that as a process question going forward, so that in the future, we would say, yes, we'll do the quick build, but we have a number of other projects we would like to submit also and be rewarded in the same way the other two entities are being rewarded. That's my point.
And thank you for that question. So a little bit of context.
Please.
All applications for TDA 3 are required to meet MTC guidelines, which include a reference to an adopted plan by the jurisdictions that are applying for those funds. So we have 3 applications that were received by the application deadline, one from the city of Calistoga, one from the city of St. Helena, and one from the town of Yountville. All 3 are being recommended for funding by NVTA staff, and that's the item before the board today. In terms of the quick build question, that was brought up a while back and went through both our ATAC, our Active Transportation Advisory Committee, our TAC, and this board when we adopted a call for projects and the associated guidelines for those. Staff felt at that time, and we still feel, that having a prioritization for quick build provides jurisdictions an opportunity to move forward those projects that are smaller, that might be challenging to fund with other grant sources outside of your general fund. And so that was the primary thinking, was there are a whole lot of small projects that jurisdictions have kind of on the back burner. Let's figure out a way with this fairly limited project. Again, we were looking at about $165,000 a year that we can then forward through NVTA to the local jurisdictions to move those projects forward. So all 3 jurisdictions are being recommended for funding. There is some resolution that we need to come to with the city of St. Helena's specific projects to ensure that they are included in existing adopted plans that have been adopted by the city. So that can include the pedestrian plan, the bicycle plan, the city's circulation element, the NVTA Vision Zero plan, or other plans or programs that the city's adopted. So just to clarify, we are recommending funding for the city and the other 2 jurisdictions that have applied. The prioritization for quick build was intended, should there be an excess in applications over the available funding, that those quick build projects would be prioritized first. We actually have an undersubscribed project list right now. So we have about $400,000 in available funds for the current year and $165,000 for the next fiscal year. We have, I think it's $300,000 in total applications. So staff are planning to come back to the NVTA board next spring for a second call for projects for the remaining 2 years in the 3-year project cycle. And we anticipate having that quick build prioritization again for that next 2-year period coming back next spring. And we hope to be able to find applications for that total $730,000 for the full 3 years, so we don't leave money on the table effectively. Does that answer your question?
It does to a
Okay.
certain, it does to a certain degree. I guess I'm not in the room with the TAC members and staff. I don't know what the dialogue was. Well, you have a $50,000 request from the city of St. Helena for a quick build project. And I don't know if there was a negotiation or discussion saying, hey, that's really not a lot of money. Do you have any other projects that you would like to recommend? Because we would highly encourage you to do that. I don't want to throw my staff under the bus. I'm just saying, I wish I was there because I have an idea about other projects that I believe that are in our plan. I just think maybe we were overly by the book when we were looking at just a quick build project and not other projects. And again, I don't know about how those discussions rolled out. And that's my concern, I guess.
And I wouldn't want to speculate either. I wasn't in some of those conversations with your city and their staff. What I would say again is that we do have plans for a second call for projects for the 2 remaining years. There is significant funding remaining in this program for those 2 outer years, and we have already talked to all of our local jurisdictions, encouraging them to apply, whether for a quick build project or for a larger, more permanent project. For example, the city of Calistoga is applying for, I believe, $150,000 as part of a $1.7 million project for sidewalks and a bridge within there just north of downtown area.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and
Appreciate it.
Patrick, quick question. If in spring, when jurisdictions are submitting applications and they're not in a plan, will the timing of the funding work okay with including them in the next active transportation plan that we're working on? Or will the funds expire?
The funds do not expire,
Yeah.
so funds roll over. So if we have undersubscribed applications for the next cycle, those funds will continue to kind of pile up and they will earn a modest interest until there are applications that meet those criteria. I don't know that we will necessarily have the active transportation plan
It won't be
adopted.
done, but it will be certainly well on its way in terms of process.
Yes, but I would also say that nothing prohibits a local jurisdiction now from looking at amending their existing circulation element or their bike plan or their pedestrian plan to include other projects or priorities that they may want to apply for next spring.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just as a tip from somebody who's been on this for a while, a lot of times it helps when we find out through this process that there's some pots of money out there. It behooves us to let staff know that, hey, there's this pot of money, let's think about something. Because there have been occasions where I will say, hey, to staff, there's this pot of money, either TDA 3 or whatever, let's try to think of something. And I get the sense that that isn't always on top of staff's mind about, taking advantage of every pot of money that comes around. So sometimes it's up to us to just pass it along and take advantage of it because it helps. So, but at any rate, if there's no further questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Great. All right. All those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, then we'll move to item 12.4, which is Transportation Fund for Clean Air, the 40% fund program project list. Again, Director Doring, if you have some questions.
Yeah, and I appreciate your indulgence, members. Here, I'm noticing that we're all over the map in terms of the costs allocated for the EV charging stations. They don't seem to have any rhyme or reason as to how they match, and you have various jurisdictions coming up with numbers. I don't know what's included. Some could be installation, just EV charging. And it seems, again, the city of St. Helena maybe has underestimated the cost of its EV chargers. So you'll have 10 EV chargers, $75,000, and you may have 6 in another jurisdiction for $150,000. I'm just giving rough numbers. And I'm like, wait a minute, we have to have some consistency here. Are we all looking at the same numbers in terms of what it costs to purchase and install an EV charger? And if we have made a mistake, I want to make sure that the city of St. Helena has not underestimated the cost and maybe increases. That's my question there. And thank you for your patience with that question.
Sure. Thanks for your question. Yes, there is quite a bit of variability with what it depends on the type of station you're installing, whether or not you need infrastructure in the ground. And I think probably you're looking at the city of American Canyon, who's done something very unique recently, which is to install solar charging stations. They did it in the last round. They're applied for 2 more. And that's a little bit different type of infrastructure. They are more expensive to install, but do have a safety component in that they can work when there's a power outage. There's onboard storage with those. So it's difficult to compare costs unless unless you're looking at apples to apples. And I understand your concern. The other thing with TFCA is the cost effectiveness feature. So it's dependent on the number of hours that the charging station is being used. So there are assumptions made in the worksheet that sort of establish what that is. And I think we worked with staff on that to make sure that they weren't underestimating. I know, the cost is variable. I'm sure that both Tony and Rebecca behind me can speak to that too. We've installed some recently and we've applied for additional charging also down at the maintenance facility for the public. So yeah, there's a lot of variability depending on what it is you're installing and the level of use. One caveat for TFCA is that any funds applied for charging must be open to the public. It can't be, we can't, for instance, apply for these with this particular fund source for our bus charging, which is not publicly available. I hope that helps
All right,
answer the question.
Thank
Yeah.
you for that explanation.
All right. Are there any? Oh,
That I had another question now, because this is something that we discuss at our Climate Action Committee meeting, where we've been trying to figure out a regional approach to more electric vehicle chargers. This highlights the challenge in St. Helena. We don't have staff with expertise
Mhm.
on climate action, or they're out there trying to get this information. Is there any way that NVTA can help share the information that the other maybe larger cities, we know some cities actually have that staff, we do not. And at least in our city, some other cities might be in the same case, that could help us make better choices. When I hear solar, I'm thinking, great, I don't know all of the details. That sure makes sense with all the power outages we have.
Sure.
To have that, I wish we had known that sooner, and I wish that there was one place that we could be sharing information so that all of us are getting more of the electric vehicle infrastructure that we need faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that we're fully staffed, I can say it's a little easier for us to travel up to the ATSC meeting in St. Helena and do a presentation on funding programs, what types of projects those funding programs are available. I think Patrick was there a week ago up in St. Helena. So, we do make an effort to track your agendas and make sure that we're available to you to make these presentations on particularly on funding and funding sources. The other thing I'll just add is that for both TFCA and TDA3, we do ask our TAC members to keep kind of a list of projects in mind for when these calls come forward so that they're available. You can see by this report that we didn't receive any projects. NVTA was the only one that submitted a project in the first round, so we extended the call to make sure that people had time to submit for these funds. This particular fund source, if we don't program funds by November each year, we do stand the risk of losing them to another county. So we always do our best to make sure that we're programming those funds so that doesn't happen.
And I would just add that these funds are notoriously difficult to manage. And it doesn't go away after the project's done.
Yeah.
And I think most jurisdictions recognize that. So that is part of probably why we had a lack of applications in that first round. It's also hard to meet the cost effectiveness bar that the Bay Area Air Quality Management District sets.
I was going
Go
to
ahead.
kind of ask and clarify that because coming from a world in my past where there's the application process and then the reporting process can be so cumbersome, can be so expensive in itself. And the funds, these are really small fund amounts. So, every dollar counts, but then again, the time in which to apply and all of the requirements in terms of reporting back could be counterproductive. So I was wondering if that was the case in this situation.
For TFCA, really the onus falls on NVTA, particularly around audit periods. We are audited every 2 years under TFCA. One of the ways that the function of the worksheet, and Kate mentioned, meeting cost effectiveness being a challenge, and those worksheets are updated annually. The formulas come down by CARB. We usually see those sometime in the spring, and you have to use the most current updated worksheet. one of the things is you put in, there's a place on the worksheet where you insert the years of effectiveness. Oftentimes, what people do is insert up to, some project types will allow up to 10 years in that spot. If you do that, and we encourage people not to do that, sometimes it's the only way to meet that cost effectiveness number on the worksheet, which puts us on the hook for 10 years plus the typical 7 that you have to retain records. It's an interesting thing. If the project closes out, we run it through an audit, then we're out of there. But if for some reason they missed that project in an audit, it can come back. And a good example was not this current audit that we're completing now, but 2 years ago, we had projects that went back to 2011.
Yeah.
And
So
so
I
that,
think that's-
we encourage people to not, try to meet that cost effectiveness with that long extension of a project.
And that's a really good point, because not every dollar is worth chasing down. It'll cost you $2 for every dollar you try to chase down on the reality of some grants and some fundings in terms of what we're talking about, the application and the reporting process.
Yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
this reporting is it's biannual. It's required by the Air District to report, and it's a simple one-page form that is filled out in May and October. The final report requires that you fill out an additional cost effectiveness worksheet. So it's not as cumbersome as some.
I'll move approval over the item.
Oh, excellent. We have a motion to.
Second,
And a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we are at closed session.
I have a meeting at the transit maintenance facility at 3. And so unless the board really needs me to be here or follow up afterward, the closed session, I mean, I cannot go to that meeting, but